So the best place for us to start with this is let me sort of get an idea of where everybody is. Who's ever found themselves, no matter how much past training they've done, they sit in front of their clients and the whole mind goes blank. Like you just have no idea what to do. Who's had that experience before? Okay, pretty common, right? Who's spent 2 or 3 hours thinking about things, worrying about things, writing out scripts, having workbooks, asking other therapists? Then your client rocks up and says, hey, I don't want to work on that. I want to work on something different. Who's found that before? Who's gone through 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 sessions and get to the end and client says the problem's still here? Who's had that before? Pretty common. Who would like the idea, if that's sort of the problems we're experiencing and many others, who likes the idea of this? Who likes the idea of never having to solve a client's problem ever again? Who likes that as an idea? To never put pressure on yourself to even have to understand what the real problem is or the root cause. Who likes that idea? Who likes to never, ever, 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 ever have to prepare for even 1 minute before a session? No more scripts, no more workbooks. Who likes the idea of not having to rely on regressions, timelines, language patterns, scripts? I don't know what the other techniques are out there. What did I see the other day? Higher self-patterning. Don't know what the hell that is. Okay, we're going to get rid of all of that stuff. And although this is an advanced conversation hypnosis program, we're going to take it at a very basic level. And the reason it's called advanced, because you'll be well advanced over the more traditional therapists by doing less and having your clients literally do the transformation themselves. Now, I know a lot of people will say, I understand my client does all the healing for themselves, but then that same therapist spends 5 hours talking at their therapist and reading scripts and books, which sort of violates that principle anyway, okay? So that's a really big recap of me saying who would like to just be a lazy therapist for the rest of their career and literally do not even a quarter of what you've been doing in the past and have your clients turn around and say, what the fuck was that? Like, what the hell did you just do? Who likes that as an idea? Okay. So what I recommend everybody does for the next 2 days and the next years of your career, put everything else aside. Okay. This whole idea that every client has to go through a regression, bullshit. The whole idea that every client has to see 3 scenes, bullshit. That your client has to hug their inner child, bullshit. All of those principles and all of those things that everybody says you have to do, we're going to do the total opposite. And I'm going to show you that you can get to the same place without all of those things. Who likes that idea? Okay. So there's a really easy way to become really spontaneous as a therapist. So let's say I'm working with Christopher. He charges me $1,500 and I say, well, when can I get started? And he says, well, you can do it right now. That's what we're going for. Speed, efficiency, no setting up, anything like that. Okay. Does that make sense to everybody? All right. So let me throw this out there. Let's start here. Let's sort of get a round robin and just unmute yourself if you want to answer. Where do all of our problems exist? Conscious, unconscious, somewhere else? What do you guys think?
Unconscious.
Unconscious.
Yeah.
Unconscious.
Yeah. Who would agree unconscious? Who here, I know this is a bit of a stretch, but who here has ever had a problem in their life before? You might have to lie, I understand. Who's ever had a problem that's been so confusing that no matter how many things you try and fix it, it just doesn't go away? Who's had that before? Why is that? Any ideas? Because it's the same thing for your clients. Any ideas?
Stuck in a loop.
Stuck in a loop? Yep.
Just doesn't know what the main problem is.
Don't know what the main problem is? Yep.
We try to fix the symptoms and just miss the fixing.
That pesky symptom. Okay. We all know that when a client says to us, hey, Fritz, I want to quit smoking, or I have anxiety, or I have fear of making money. What has this client ultimately told us?
Garbage.
Garbage. Now,
The best guess.
Yep. Now, it's not a glib statement. It's true. Because all a client can tell us, remember that we worked out the problem is unconscious. All a client can tell us is their conscious rationalization of what they think the problem is. I mean, how couldn't they? Because if the problem's so unconscious, their best guess, knowing that the unconscious mind and conscious mind communicate so differently, that all the client is going to tell us is their very best guess is what the problem is. And what do you think the chances are that a client would get that right? Who thinks 100% they'd get it right every time? Impossible. So why in the hell, if a client says, I want to quit smoking, would you pull out a script that says quit smoking? Why would you pull out a script or a technique or a workbook that says the best anxiety session ever? Because all you're doing now is treating the symptom. Does that make sense? And this is why, to be an extremely thorough and powerful therapist or a coach, you cannot rely on those things. Now, what's crazy is you have a client coming in saying, I want to quit smoking, which is just their conscious experience. And then we jump in and say, oh, I've got a technique for that. And we start reading a script that says smoking, 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 breathe fresh air, have this, no more cravings. And then an hour later, you wonder why your client's still smoking. Does that make sense? Did that ever perplex anybody when they really looked at that? Like, this is a symptom. Why the hell am I reading this? And the same thing for a timeline, same thing for a regression. I think the biggest block for really great therapists to go, really evolve into doing really thorough therapy with their clients is not only trying to solve their client's problem, which is not your job, but we're going to show you how to do that. So your client literally does it for themselves, but they're in too much of a rush to try and solve things, which is ironic because that's what we're getting paid for. But one of the worst things we can do as therapists is put pressure on ourselves to try and solve a problem that your client has no idea about, you have no idea about, and it's just basically a guessing game back and forward, and then your client wonders why it's not working. But the more traditional therapy trainings, what are they relying on? Hey, close your eyes and walk down the steps and feel relaxed. We're going to go past that, where we're going to spend 2 days focusing on the therapy, not the hypnosis. Isn't that peculiar? What if you never had to put a client into hypnosis again? Would that make it so much easier? Because I'm here to tell you, and I'll prove this, that hypnosis and therapy have nothing to do with each other. But a lot of people say, well, Scott, doesn't my client have to go into hypnosis in order to solve the problem? Well, let me ask you this, guys. I asked you before, where does the client's problem exist? We all said unconscious, right? Okay. So what if the first thing we did, which we're going to do now, was we asked some questions. It's called the hypnotic interview. And we asked our client to try and explain a problem to us that is unconscious. What do you think is going to happen when a client starts telling us about a problem that is unconscious? What do you think is going to happen to them? Any ideas?
May get confused.
They go into trance.
They go into trance.
They go unconscious.
So why the hell would we have to formally do an induction if they're going to go there anyway? That just saves us 15 or 20 minutes, right? So we're going to find the hypnotic interview. And a lot of the stuff we do is if you get this part right, you can forget about hypnosis, deepeners, suggestibility tests, all of that stuff. We're going to do 5 or 6 or 7 things all in one movement. Who likes that? Like pure laziness. Okay. Because we know, as I mentioned before, a client's problem is unconscious. So all we have to do as the therapist is find out as best as we can what that problem is, and then alert the unconscious mind to solve it for them and just let our client transform in front of us while we sit back and just wait for them to figure it all out for themselves. That's where we're going. Okay. So in order to do this, let's dive straight into the very first part of an ACH session, transformation breakthrough. No matter what your client tells you from now on, guys, whatever your client books in for is not the problem you're going to solve. Does that make sense for everybody? Which means that whatever your client tells you their problem is, in your head, you can think, you're full of shit. You don't know what's going on. Because if they did, they would have solved it. Who here would think that if you knew what your real core problems were, you could solve them? Who would actively solve them? But we can't, because the problem is unconscious. Same with our clients. So gone are the days where a client comes in and says, oh, Maria, I want to quit smoking. Maria says, oh, I don't like stop smoking sessions. You're not doing stop smoking sessions. You're not doing anxiety sessions. You're not doing fear sessions. You're not doing hug and high five my inner child sessions. You can tell I love inner child stuff, right? Jokes aside, you're not doing those things because all you're doing, if you do those things, is fixing the symptom. And if you're ever wondering why, my God, it's taken me like 7 sessions. Why can't I figure this out? It's because you've spent 7 sessions talking about the wrong friggin' thing. Does that make sense, guys? And if there was one thing you could take away right at the start here was just to really absorb that message. Whatever your client tells you is just a guess. And what will happen is once we start to question this experience they're having, it's going to get clarity. And from clarity, you start to see things called unconscious moments, knots. These are all the therapeutic tools that we're going to be relying on. And ultimately, by investigating the problem, the client will have a breakthrough at the same time. Does that make sense just for now, guys, before we get into this first demo? Okay, so the parameters of this first demo, guys, we are only going to look at one thing. How do we start this crazy ACH session? Okay, we're going to do a little bit of the hypnotic interview, then we'll get some feedback, then we'll go to another demo, and each demo will try and extend that ACH timeline. So by the end, you have every single moving part. Does that make sense, guys? So we'll get a real client and a real therapist. Realize we're not going to solve this problem, but who would be happy just to talk about a problem they have? Nothing the biggest thing in the world. Who would be happy just to talk about that problem, just to get a bit of clarity onto it? If it happens to break through, so be it. If not, who cares either way? But I'll be coaching that therapist through. We're going to just ask some very basic questions, and we're going to begin this process. Who would like to be the client in this case? So Kevin.
I can.
Yep. So Kevin, Yogi, do you want to be the therapist? We've got Kevin as the client. Do you want to be the therapist?
Sure.
Okay. See the pressure, right? Like, fuck you, Scott.
Yeah.
But I'm just going to
be the client, but
yeah.
I'll do it. I'll do it.
All right. So guys, what I'll get everybody to do, thanks Fritz. I'll get everybody else to turn off their microphones and their cameras just for now. And we're just going to look at one thing. How do we start this session, or how do we start this intervention? From this day forward, guys, it doesn't matter what your client's coming in for. We start every single ACH session in the same place. All we're going to ask is, what's the problem? What happens next? Who knows? And I'll just coach you two through this to get a bit of flow going. I'll stop it at certain points. I'll jump in. If you get lost, let me know, but I'll stop it at one point and then we'll get some feedback. So no pressure. Let's go from there, guys. Let's see what happens.
No pressure.
No pressure.
Yeah. And what was it? Kevin?
Kevin.
Or is it Scott? Kevin. Hey, I'm Brian. What is your problem?
I'm having some difficulties niching my business down.
Having difficulties niching your business down.
Correct.
Okay. And how long has that problem been going?
12 years?
12 years.
Let's pause right there. That's the start of it, guys. None of this rapport stuff, none of this other stuff. Close your eyes, Kevin, relax and go deeper, and none of that stuff. And what's crazy is we're 2 questions in. We still don't have an idea of what's happening. And I've done this on purpose. But the transformation is going to begin because we've asked Kevin, what's the problem? Consciously, he's going to tell us what it is. It came out very, very quick. But the second question, a bit of jokes aside, when we said, how long has this been going on for? Bit of laughter, but then Kevin had to go searching for that answer, even if it was just quick. So Brian did a great job and has started the trance process just by asking a follow-up question. That's all we've done so far. Okay. So Brian, what do we know so far? What has he told us?
Having problems with figuring out like one niche, and it's been 12 years.
Yep. And that's all we know.
Yeah.
So we can't get a technique out and say, oh, I've got a technique for that. How to niche your business after 13. Oh, that's 13 years. Where do I have the 12-year one? Let me look. We don't have to do any of that because we still don't know what this thing is. Okay. So what do we do from here? One of the biggest principles is what I call staying curious. Instead of trying to solve a client's problem, what I like to do is get really curious. Why does he have this problem? Why has it taken 12 years? What does he mean by niching? What's stopping him? Any of these curious ideas. And by getting curious, you take the pressure off yourself to try and resolve it. And we find out some really juicy information. Does that make sense for you, Brian?
Yes.
So out of curiosity, knowing where we are, what are you curious about based on the responses he has given us so far?
Yeah, I'm curious what happened 12 years ago. Like 12 seems like a specific number.
Well, that's when I started my business originally. That's when I did my training. That's when I tried figuring out this path. And along the way, you know, I found myself very interested in a lot of aspects of this business, working with people. And I'm just finding it difficult to boil it all down to see one type of problem.
Or do we lose Brian? Or we might have lost Brian. That's all right, Kevin. I'll pick it up from here before Brian comes back. So along the way, you found other things that sort of pique your interest in regards to the whole starting your business and things, right?
That's correct.
So what's stopping you from picking a certain niche?
I like the variety.
And pause
I like
right there.
seeing
Pause right there. Did everyone see what happened just there? We saw our first glimpse of and his little unconscious, like, yes, Scott, you got me. You started to see some little things called unconscious moments. And these happen quick, guys. So you'll be able to go back to the recording and watch this, but let me alert you to what I'm seeing. A lot of blinking. And it was a very normal question. There was no hypnotic language. All I've asked is, what's stopping you from picking a niche? He had to search for it. First thing that came out is, I like the variety. That's rubbish. And I know that's rubbish because it came out so quick. What happened afterwards, after the thinking, is of way more importance. Okay. And we saw some blinking. He looked away. There was some sighing, a little bit of nervous laughter. These are the things that I'm looking out for, because what's happening right now is I'm now talking to Kevin consciously, but I'm getting some unconscious responses. But unfortunately, the unconscious mind just doesn't say what it means to say. It beats around the bush and goes on tangents. Okay. Your job as a therapist, especially in this part, is to get really good at spotting what is conscious information that we can ignore and what is the juicy unconscious stuff that sets us towards the direction of this thing we call root cause problems. Okay. So I'll just sort of pick it up where we were. So Kevin, you said, like, haven't picked a niche because you like the idea of just there's many different types of clients you can work with. How is that a problem though, in regards to picking your niche? And there we go.
How is that a problem? Okay. Yeah, I'm processing. I'm not quite sure how to answer that question.
Now let's take a back step here. A very seemingly normal question, but why is it perplexing Kevin? Is because it's unconscious to him. And I'm asking him to retrieve information that is normally hidden from him. But here's the crazy part, guys. Let me ask you this, Kevin. You've probably sat there and thought about, why the hell can't I pick a niche, right? Probably done that many times. Yep. So why the hell hasn't it worked by him posing the same question for himself? Why is there something different happening by me intervening and asking the same question he's probably asked himself?
You broke the loop.
Broke the loop.
You broke the loop.
Yeah, if you think of this like a warp tunnel. Let's say Kevin sits there and goes, okay, today's the day. I'm going to find my niche. He goes to write his niche down and he instantly gets sucked back into the old excuses, the old conclusions, the old thoughts. Over and over, no matter which direction he comes from, he still gets sucked back into that loop. By us intervening and asking a question on the outside looking in, it starts to break that loop down. I don't know where it's going yet. We're not even close to where this could go. But by getting curious about Kevin's problem, we're starting to see all the little juicy bits in between. Now, I could guess, because I have a feeling I know where it's going to go, but I've got to avoid that because I want him to reveal it. But all we know so far is Kevin's given us about 95% conscious fluff and about 5% juice. My goal is to follow that juicy stuff. Okay. So, Kevin, how are you feeling right now when you think about the whole finding a niche thing?
In this moment, I feel very curious.
Mm-hmm. In regards to what?
Just putting it underneath the spotlight right now, I could feel some processing going on. It's almost like I'm almost able to answer the question that was elusive the whole time.
Have we done anything, guys? I think we're 4 or 5 questions in. But what is, Kevin, and this is good to know for your clients as well, what is already starting to happen? We're starting to loosen the concrete. We're starting to break that down. This is therapy. No fucking timeline. He doesn't have to float above anything. He doesn't have to regress. But by getting curious about where Kevin is on his problem, it's starting to become malleable. And this is why we always start in the same place, which is what's the problem? We start where the client is. We ask questions about it so it becomes loose, it becomes malleable, and then it can start to change. But if we're too busy doing this and saying, hey, Kevin, what's the problem? Okay, cool. Tick that one off the list. What's the next best question? Oh shit, where's that script? I'm missing out on this wonderful person sitting in front of me where I need to be concentrating because Kevin's going to feed me all the information that I need for him to have this breakthrough. Okay. And we can keep going from where we are. You said before, Kevin, you started processing. What exactly is it that you're processing? What's starting to make more sense?
I'm starting to wonder if I'm a little worried of getting burnt out by seeing the same type of client over and over.
Now we're getting, thank you, we're getting a different layer of problem. Okay. But before, he said it was, I know you have to sort of paraphrase, forgive me here. I like working with a mixture of people. But the unconscious mind has now told me, oh, what if burnout happens because of seeing the same person? This, I get really excited about this. This is a main knot. When I say knot, guys, I'm saying N-O-T. It could even be K-N-O-T. He's tangled up in a conclusion. And everybody on this call right now in this training program will be stuck in their own conclusions. The conclusion Kevin has given us, it's a part conscious conclusion, unconscious conclusion. If I see the same people all the time, I will get burnt out. So to avoid burnout, I don't want a niche because then I'm going to see the same people. Because if I see the same people, I'm going to burn out. Niche, burnout, niche, burnout, same people. Can everyone see that going around? We have to break this because the unconscious mind is stuck on this conclusion. We have to have the unconscious mind, and we're going to show you guys how to do this, accept a new possibility that maybe seeing the same person would make him a better therapist. Thus, he'll make more money and his business will grow. But I can't tell him that directly because he's in that loop. And actually, probably me giving him that suggestion, I can see it's already having some sort of effect. So it could already be starting to break. Hopefully, and we'll get some feedback soon, guys. Hopefully you guys can see how much has gone on in a 6-minute conversation. Okay, so we'll pick it up from there. We'll go through a couple more questions and I'll get some feedback. If you're happy to continue on, Kevin, with this as well.
Yep.
So what is seeing the same, I'm trying not to collapse this because I don't want you to have the breakthrough yet. What is seeing the same? How do you get to the point of seeing the same people that would make you think burnout's a possibility?
Well, honestly, through that conversation that you were just having to the rest of the group about the conclusion, and I've already thought about, like what you said, that I could get even better seeing the same person over and over, that same type of person getting even better, really refining it down. But something else started to click. Even though I'm seeing the same type of people, I'm not seeing the same type of people. They're just symptoms. If they're coming for anxiety, they're coming for smoking, they're just symptoms. I guess I'm never really going to be seeing the same person. I may be seeing the same symptom, the same garbage that shows up, but breaking through those loops, I'm not seeing that same person. I'm seeing something else. So I guess it's not a problem.
This is a breakthrough, guys. I'm not doing anything. And this is just a very small little approach, what we're doing right now, an attempt to, conversate with Kevin. We just found something. It's not the end of it.
Right.
We got somewhere. Did I tell him to think any of that? Actually, indirectly, because I'm trying to teach, but he would have come up with it anyway. But I'm not telling Kevin to close his eyes, not telling Kevin to, lock his fingers in and get hypnotized. I'm having a genuine, curious conversation because I care about Kevin. I want him to have this breakthrough, but not to the extent of me forcing him through that. I'm just breaking down the knots and the conclusions that he's found for himself, repeated them back to him, so he has to think about them in a different way. Okay, so just sort of follow-up question, Kevin. So regardless whether you niche or not, or you do get burnt out, if that was the case, it doesn't matter whether you see the same people because you're not really seeing the same people, right?
Correct. Yep.
So what's the problem?
There is no problem. There is no problem. It was only a problem because I thought it was. I was stuck in a loop.
So this is now worth $1,500.
Okay, PayPal?
Yes, I will invoice. Now, jokes aside, what if this one little conversation was the catalyst? And no, we haven't done testing. We haven't done anything else. We'll do all that other stuff later. This is generally just at the start. There's more knots to this. I know there is. We can get really deep with this. But what if this one little conversation, guys, regardless of how long it took, you charged $1,500 for, and Kevin went away and made his first $10,000 month by just following the process of the 100K? You cannot tell me what you charged him is not worth it if that breakthrough is so big later. Okay. Now we're going to stop it right there, Kevin. We might even explore this a little bit later. Okay. If you're happy to, but just for you as the client, did that make sense of just questioning the problem, doing this little hypnotic interview?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
Awesome. And that's all we need for now, guys. So guys, everybody come back. Let's get some feedback. Let's talk about this. And then we'll know what to talk about next. This is how these 2 days are going to go. So Fritz, if you can just get him off of Spotlight, if you haven't already, which you may have done already. I need to come back. Full view. Sorry, guys. Oh, there we go. Sorry, guys. Bear with me. Nope, don't want that one. Ah, there we go. Gallery. All right. What the hell was that? We had a chat for 10 minutes, bit of a conversation, asked some questions, probably not unlike the questions you guys have asked your clients. So what happened? Let's break this down because a lot actually occurred. Any thoughts about what we just saw? Knowing that this is the start. Okay, we haven't gone to the rest of it yet. There's more stuff to follow after this. All we've done is explored this thing we call the hypnotic interview.
Scott, I have a question.
Go for it.
So on your Udemy course, you kind of started with priming. You're not starting with priming here. No. You're just going straight into.
That's a very basic stuff. We can forget about priming. Priming's good. There are a couple of reasons for priming. If you go to the priming course, I'll give you some parameters of when I would use priming, but right now it wasn't necessary. I just want to dive straight in.
Mm-hmm.
So any thoughts, guys, on what we just saw?
Yeah, I think it's amazing how simple that process is. All you're really doing is echoing back what they said. Mm-hmm. And you could see them starting to transform themselves. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And as even sort of messy as that session was by me jumping in, pausing, stopping, asking questions, we still get to the same place. But let's break it down where we are right now. So client comes in, Kevin, it doesn't even matter about the context, because no matter what Kevin told us about his problem, who would agree that that's not the real problem he's experiencing? Who would agree with that? So it doesn't matter where he starts. Kevin could have said, the reason I can't find a niche is because my auntie's an alien and she said so. And aliens are the most knowledgeable when it comes to growing a business. He could have said anything, jokes aside, anything. Because all Kevin's going to tell us, all Brett's going to tell me, all Ainsley's going to tell me, all Vincent, Fritz, anyone's going to tell me when we first ask what's the problem is their conclusion. So the first principle I want to alert you guys to is when a client gives us their conclusion, the very first thing, do not get derailed by it. Do not get sucked into it. Oh, smoking, I hate smoking sessions. Weight loss, I hate weight loss sessions, because that's not the real problem. Doesn't that give you a lot of freedom when it comes to working with clients? Because no matter what they tell you at the start, it's just going to be a guess. They're never going to get it right. If they did get it right, they wouldn't need to come and see us. So let's use the parameters of what Kevin gave us, which was around the niche, not niching down. Now, who here has had struggles with that as well, not knowing where to niche and what to niche? Okay. Who thinks the context of their problem is different than Kevin's? It has to be. It can't all be the same, because every person is different. Everybody has different likes, desires, hates, and wants. So the reason I bring this up is just because Kevin, we've had a chat about the niche, does not make this, oh, that's the technique I use to help someone with a niche. No, because everybody is going to be different. Okay, so we asked Kevin, what's the problem? He said something around his niche. And then we asked another question to get clarity. The first question we asked, you'll find that most times your client will be able to just tell you what they think the problem is, because they've rehearsed it a lot of times. And the information comes out very quickly. There's no thoughts. There's no pausing. There's no emotion. It's just blah. This is what it is. Who's seen that with clients before? It's like they just can't wait to tell you what they think their problem is. Let them vent a little bit, which is fine. Okay. Then we asked a follow-up question. You guys will be able to go back and watch the recording. It happened very quickly, and that's all it needs right now is just some quickness to it. We asked Kevin to basically explain his answer more, and he paused. He looked away. He went into the unconscious to retrieve the information, then came out and gave us that information. Now, why is that part so important? Why is that going into the unconscious and coming back out with retrieved information? Why is that so important to us? Any ideas?
I could
Yeah, just yell it out, guys.
I could imagine that it is presenting some knots to us because it comes out unconsciously.
Yeah, he's starting to present the conclusions, the thoughts. He's basically retrieving information that wasn't there until he needed it. And because I know it's not there, he has to go somewhere else. I know when he comes back out, he's going to bring a little bit of trance with him, called a fractionation. I'm going to ask another question, goes back in, comes back out, in, out. Eventually he's going to go in. There's no more out anymore. Does that make sense? But it doesn't look like your traditional trance. We'll look at that a little bit later, because everyone says, well, where's the eye closure, the catalepsy? Forget about that stuff. We don't need it. Okay. So we asked Kevin, he gave us a response, and then all we did was ask another question based on the response, and some more juicy stuff came out. It went from this is the problem to, oh, hang on, this is a part of the problem as well. Oh, hang on, there's this little part over here. And layer by layer, he's starting to present the knots, the conclusions. So we're getting a better caricature of the whole problem. And then he did some therapy on his own, which we'll explore later. That was just him working it out. And that's the whole idea. We don't have to do anything. But do you see, by asking questions about the problem to find out what it really is, the trance, the root cause, the therapy, the deepener, the hypnosis, everything you would do individually happens all at once. Isn't that more of an efficient way to do things? Because if we were at a traditional training, what would we be looking at now? Okay, let's walk down the steps. Your client doesn't have to be relaxed to have therapy. Your client doesn't have to have a regression to have therapy. The way that we do it with this style of ACH is bring what is unconscious conscious. Because usually what is unconscious doesn't make sense consciously. And that's enough to, most cases, collapse it. So a new choice, a new aha moment comes out. And we'll look more about that when we get into the therapy part. But does everyone sort of see that in action right there?